Well, God bless and hello. It's great to see everybody. Today, our topic is going to be word choice. Word choice. You ever wondered why certain things in your life didn't happen the way that you imagined? And on the other hand, have you ever marveled at how you miraculously received exactly what you did envision? They're both good. And in both cases, the answer was as simple as your word choices. It's always word choices, and I'll explain that in just a few minutes. Today I'm going to show you that a simple change in vocabulary can change everything about your life. Everything. Now typically I don't like to be cooped up with complete strangers, kept on a strict time schedule, and limited to where I can go. But the longer I stayed on that cruise ship, the better I felt. And I asked myself why. Was it the fresh sea air and the motion of the ocean? Was it the freedom of being disconnected from Wi-Fi? Was it traveling with a group of lovely ladies and seeing places I have never seen before? Was it the freedom that comes from dancing like no one was watching or singing out loud with a group of complete strangers at the piano bar? Was it the unlimited drink package? Or was it something else? Almost all the people I met on that ship, they mentioned that they felt the same way as I did. And I asked myself, why? Why? And so as I made friends with some of the staff, and I learned their happy little secret. And they're taught to remember our names and to phrase everything with a positive slant. For example, when you thank the staff, they say, "It's a pleasure, Mark," or "You're welcome, Mark," instead of saying something like, "No problem, no worries." And the servers would say something like, "We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. I start work at 7. And guests feel noticed. They felt welcome and appreciated, which in turn incubates and promotes a positive attitude. And this positive experience soon becomes contagious, and the guests subconsciously and spontaneously begin emulating the positive speech patterns they've heard from the boat staff. Simply put, the word choices strategically placed by the staff is why we all enjoyed that cruise so much. The same works for any of us. Now, of course, everything else was nice. But you could, if the staff was miserable, we would have all been miserable, and it would have rubbed off. You've gone into places where people were unhappy with their job, and it's a miserable experience. And you've gone into stores where the people love their job, and it's a great shopping experience. Proverbs 25:11 from the CEV says, "The right word at the right time is like precious gold set in silver." How many of you would you like some precious gold set in silver? Be nice. It'd be nice. Other translations say it's like a beautiful set of jewelry, or apples of gold and pitchers of silver. It's translated many different ways, but the right word at the right time is the key. Now this goes for us too. Our choice of words is why we have what we have and why we do what we do. You are really just an accumulation of the words you've allowed in your head. So am I. The things that we have are because of what we've allowed in our head. And in a few minutes, I'm going to show you just some simple, subtle things that are very popular in our culture and almost go unseen, but they make a difference. And I'll show you. See, words cause us to fail or flourish. Words can set us free or bring us to our knees. After all, doesn't Proverbs 18:21 say that life and death are in the power of the tongue? So what does that mean? Life and death are in the power of the tongue. Whose tongue? Well, it's got to be yours. Your life. I mean, it's like that story I've said so many times about my friend who told us that every male in his family dies before they're 55. And I didn't, I'd always think, I thought, well, he knew the word better than that. That wasn't going to happen. And literally he moved out of our basement, this guy, when he was 54. And within months he was dead of natural causes. He believed what every woman in his family had told him, that every male in their family dies before they're 55. You think words don't have power? Words have incredible power, especially the ones you tell yourself. But every good staff of any great hotel knows that just the way they put words together, the word choices will make a guest stay enjoyable and maybe make them stay an extra day, or it'll be miserable. So death and life are in the power of the tongue. Let's harness the power of life. Let's harness the power of life. Like that ship's staff, we can make an amazing difference on our journey through life as we choose and use our words wisely. Now, here's some common vocabulary pitfalls. Now, we're all keenly aware when we get verbally hammered. Why, you so-and-so, that people cuss you out or whatever, or they say things that they meant to hurt you, and you feel hurt. You feel it in your gut. You feel it in your heart. Your head throbs sometimes if it went on all day. People, your contractors, sometimes your family. It could be almost anything. But every single day we're inundated with seemingly harmless little phrases that steer our minds away from the positive. And these tiny little twists in dialogue will change everything. If you keep wondering why things aren't working, this is the simplest thing you can change, but it's going to be the hardest thing to continue doing. It's the power of the tongue. James 3, we're going to read verses 2 through 5 from the NET. For we all stumble in many ways. If someone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect individual, able to control the entire body as well. Controlling your words, especially the ones you speak to yourself, if you can do that, you're going to be in control of your entire life. You think, oh, that's easy. Well, if it was so easy, according to James, Jesus' younger half-brother, perfection is possible. Now just think about that last verse. If someone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect individual. If you don't mess up in what you say, you can be a perfect individual. Now, perfection will get you closer to your goals, wouldn't you say? If you had a perfect shot and you're a basketball player, if you knew that program perfectly, would it help? If you knew the laws that are in your business perfectly, would that help? Sure it would. This is one way we can get as close to perfection as possible. It's really the only way. Remember Jesus Christ before he was 30, was he perfect? Was he born perfect? He was perfect until he was perfect his entire life. But he wasn't powerful until he received Holy Spirit. He was perfect, which means perfection is available. It's the words that we allow into our heads, especially the ones we tell ourselves. Now, some of these are insidious. Control your words, especially the ones that you speak to yourself, and you're going to be in control of your entire life. Verse 3, and if we put bits into the mouths of horses to get them to obey us, then we guide their entire bodies. Right? Look at ships too. Though they are so large and driven by harsh winds, they are steered by a tiny rudder whenever the pilot's inclination directs. So too, the tongue is a small part of the body, yet it has great pretensions. Such a small part of our body, but I guarantee it's got me into more trouble than any other part of my body. Words, folks. Words. Now, earlier I mentioned the modern responses to thank you, like no worries or no problem. And we're used to hearing those, right? You say thank you to somebody, they go, no worries, no problem. Instead of you're welcome or my pleasure. Now just think they're small. Those are small words, but what did they just put into your head? Just a little bit. It's words, but listen, let's break it down just a little bit. These seemingly innocent, normal responses have a foundation built on a negative. To say no problem or no worries or hey, don't worry about it may be popular, but they ever so slightly tilt our minds away from the positive. Our minds hear the words problem, worry, or the word we all love to hear, no. And this affects us microscopically. Now, the only reason I'm telling you this, you're thinking, oh, come on, Mark, that's ridiculous. That's not what they mean by that. It's still going in your head, folks. It's still going in your head. It's those microscopic little words that change a life, that set our sails a certain way, that move us in the direction of the world, which takes us away from the direction that we really want to go. It's the course of the world. It's just slowly manipulating the good out of us. It's popular. In my networking group, you say hello to the men, and half the time they say, well, if I say, it's good to see you, they say, it's good to be seen. And I think, I know it's catchy, but I've heard it for years, the same thing. And I know they're going to say it every time. I got to think of something else to say to them instead of good to see you, But what it is it draws the attention back to them instead of them saying, thank you, it's nice seeing you too. It's a difference. It's just slight difference. A very slight difference, but it makes a difference in people's minds. It makes a difference in our minds. There's thousands of these little things, these slightly negative phrases that we hear or use every day. Like I just said, how you doing today? No complaints. Deep down, I wonder what he's not complaining about. No complaints. Okay. Or you bring your project to your boss, and instead of her saying, looks great, she says, not bad. You're thinking, what the heck does that mean? Not bad. Compared to what? As opposed to what? That's not a good answer. Not bad. How's your steak? Not bad. Not bad. Okay, if it's lousy, it's bad. If it's good, say it's good. But to say little things like that, it's not bad. It's really not good for our minds. It may be funny, but what's it opposed to? Or you ever heard, hey, why don't we meet for lunch sometime? That's normal, right? Why don't we meet up for lunch sometime? Sounds good. But why don't you just say, let's do lunch, instead of why don't we? You see? And it's those little words, it's so subtle, but those things go into our head and they tear down our believing. And if you think I'm wrong, then why don't you have everything that you pray for? It's little nuances like that slow us down. By adding the word don't, we've innocently thrown in a negative. Why don't we meet for lunch? Well, what are all the reasons we shouldn't meet for lunch? Is sort of what that's saying. You're just asking somebody for trouble. Or I could do a teaching, and did you think that was okay? It sounds good, and maybe you want feedback, but it still could, you could be setting yourself up to really get hurt. Instead of, you throw a positive out there. We got to be really careful. That's why actors always have these things called green rooms. It keeps them away from people so they can just keep their mind set on what they're about to do. You know, instead of just chatting it up and somebody throws a big negative out there and then they're off kilter. We've all had that happen sometimes. You go to a party and somebody, you know, buttonholes you, they corner you, and you're going, now I know when it happens, I try to avoid that because they're almost always going to, it's usually when somebody pulls you aside, it's not going to be good. You know, something else is going to be happening. So, you know, by adding the negative word don't, we throw in that negative. Now, I'm not going to go into all these. All we have to do is start being aware of what we're saying to ourselves or what we're saying to other people. You know, does it have a negative slant or does it have a positive slant? And we're going to find that we have some bad little habits at times. These little negative phrases add up and change us, folks. And they keep you from what I taught last week, that one thing. You know, wonder why you aren't getting that job? Wonder why you're having such trouble getting back in shape? You know, finding the relationship you really want? You know, become aware of and start changing the tiny word choices you say to yourself and others, and you're going to change the course of your life. It's got to be the epicenter of believing the words that we speak to ourselves and to others. If we can control the tongue, we can control our whole life. Isn't controlling your life believing? Doesn't it add to your conviction? It's everything. You know, late in the 18th century, there was a battle called the Battle of Toulon, France, and there was a battery, a set of heavy guns placed in a very exposed position to the enemy. And very few soldiers wanted to man those guns. In fact, nobody wanted to. It was scary. But Napoleon Bonaparte, a genius in making things happen, he had a sign erected near that dangerous position that simply said, "The Battery of Fearless Men." He never lacked for volunteer gunners after that positive sign was erected. Isn't that crazy? It's the same gun. It just made people think differently about themselves. Your words make a huge impact on people, and they make an even huger impact on you. You know, with a few simple words, Napoleon got his men thinking highly of themselves. Fearless men. You see our own recruiters, an army of one. Marines used to say, what was that? A few good men, right? They just wanted a few. You know, and you think, I'm going to be one of those few. It's all advertisers. They know exactly what moves us. They've studied this. They've spent billions on research Madison Avenue has to get us to do things. It's just a manipulation of words. You still have commercials in your head from when you were a child. You don't even want them there. You see? But every once in a while, I find myself whistling that tune or something. It's like, what? I haven't thought of that in 50 years. But it's there. You know, and a lot of things they'll never leave your head. That's why be careful what you put in there, especially to yourself. You may not be able to control what other people say to you at times, but we can control what we say to ourselves all the time, every time. You know, speaking of building and controlling our word choices, the legendary success expert Earl Nightingale spoke about a 20th century study of college graduates improving their vocabulary. This has been done on business too, but the study showed that, quote, without a single exception, those who had scored the highest on vocabulary tests given in college were in the top income group, while those that had scored the lowest were in the bottom income group. End of quote. Vocabulary makes a big difference. Makes a huge difference. In fact, by improving your vocabulary, you can improve your net worth. It's true. It's proven. You know, there were studies done for some of the top 20 companies in the early 1900s on how to figure out who fits where. You know, because anybody can learn to work with their hands, but a guy who's really good at it is going to shine in that. Anybody can be good in math, can be taught math, but some people have a propensity to mathematics. And so they're going to shine in that. And if you can fit where you shine, my gosh, how good can life be? So they tried to figure this out through a series of tests. One of them was vocabulary, which surprised the researchers. The people who had the best vocabulary were always the CEOs of a company. And the people who had the worst were always the line workers. And it makes me think of helping your kids or grandkids with their vocabulary it's guaranteed to help them earn more money. It's just vocabulary. What about our biblical vocabulary? What about our spiritual vocabulary? What about our positive vocabulary? It's guaranteed to make you a success. The more positive words you say about yourself in different ways, the better you're going to be. Just like more knowledge of more words makes a difference. Usually in society, the more hardened criminals, the more violent the criminals, they're people who have the lowest vocabulary, and they're just acting out in anger. They're acting out something because they can't express themselves any other way. So they do it with anger or violence. You've all seen a mother seeing a kid just turning red with, just this little boy or this little girl's just so frustrated because they wanted her. They can't express something, and the mother goes, use your words. Use your words. They'll start hitting their brother or something like that. Use your words. And it sounds silly, but as we grow up, we learn to use our words. Helen Keller was considered a wild child. She was uncontrollable. I think her dad was in on the rebel side in the Civil War. And then they read some article in a magazine about somebody who helped kids who were blind, with sign language. And finally, this one teacher taught her, remember the thing where they put her hand under some running water, and then she spelled it with sign language in the girl's hand. And she said it was like a fog lifted when she was able to spell one word. And then through words, she became quite a success. She got the highest medal a civilian can get, from one of our presidents. We had a house next door to us that had been vacant for months as the builders were remodeling it. And somebody had bought it on a short sale, and they were going to flip it. And so they put a lot of time and a lot of money into this house. Well, when we came back from our little cruise, I saw cars there, and some women had moved in there. So I went and bought some flowers and brought it over to them. And I knocked on the door, and then the woman talked to me like, they were deaf and dumb. There's 3 women that live in that house, and none of them, they can't speak and they cannot hear. So I had to write, try to spell out my name, and they didn't seem great at lip reading either, which seemed unusual. But we tried to communicate, and I thought, boy, you really got to think through what you're going to say when you're talking with somebody like that. It's different. They have to really do it. Now, communicating to each other, their hands are flying all over the place. And it's fun to watch. And I've gone over there a couple of times and put up some temporary blinds for them to bless the ladies, and because I gave them my number and they started texting me. They can text like the wind. They can do a whole book before I get one sentence down. But what are you going to do? But the point is, it's words. It was fun when we were able, when I finally could text with them. It was like a whole door opened up. You know, and so what about us in our own minds? What kind of door can open up when we put the right fuel in there in our mind? It's got to be good. Vocabulary makes a huge difference. Remember, it'll help your children. It'll help your grandkids. It'll help you prosper. It'll help you in everything. Helping yourself learn to speak phrases that are positive and avoid the subtle negatives that are just so prevalent today will over time improve every aspect of your life. It's going to get you a step closer to perfection. How does that sound? We become closer to perfection as we control what we say to ourselves and others. Control the tongue. Let's change our cruise through life by adopting a few well-chosen words. A few well-placed words will change our meaning, our mood, and our motivation. Now we're going to, and we've seen that with, I saw that on the cruise, how the ship did that. And as the week went on, people felt more comfortable. People started trying to remember each other's names, and they weren't even, just the people were trying to do that. It's because the staff was teaching us through their example. They were teaching us to be positive through their example and through their sheer joy, seeming joy of seeing us. Well, what could we do? Why do you think you like your dog? If your dog bit you every time you went home, you wouldn't keep the dog. But it looks like it's ready to shake itself out of its own skin when you walk up, right? It's so excited. In the airport, we saw this little Asian girl, just tiny, just barely walking, and she was toddling around, and her family was trying not to sleep on the chairs. They must have been there a while. And this guy walks in with a service dog, just a tiny little cockapoo or something. It was just a little thing. And it had this little stub tail on it. And then this dog wanted something awful to be with this toddler. And so the guy walked it over near this girl, and that dog rolled on the floor, and its whole body was shaking. Its little stubby tail was moving it. It was fun to see, and the little girl was like coming out of her skin as well. And it was just fun to watch. Well, that's how good words can be to our minds. That's how our words can be to each other. Just make them want to come out of their skin. They're so happy with that. Make you evolve into the person you're designed to be. Now here's the next topic, is change words, change a life. And you may be asking, exactly how good can it get if I learn to control my words? And the answer is pretty darn good. Now, that's not a biblical quote, but it's true. Mark 11:22 says from the King James, "And Jesus answering saith unto them, have faith in God." Okay, you know, and Christians love that verse. Have faith in God. You think, oh yeah, you got it. In fact, I was at a wedding. Joseph and I went to a wedding on Friday, and this couple there, half the room was Buddhist, and half of it was Christians. And this Buddhist kid, raised in sort of a Buddhist family, was marrying a Christian girl. And well, they made him convert and get baptized, you know, before they would let him marry their daughter. And they just kept talking about Jesus this and Jesus that and Jesus this, and you're baptized in the name of Jesus, and I'm glad I was, and everything, all they were doing is sounding like idiots when they were getting up and doing their little toasts. And I thought, that isn't going to make anybody want to become a Christian. They were sort of hitting them over the head with Christianity. And then, so you saw the kid sort of shrink the more they talked like that. And it was sort of weird to see. He was happy to be married, but it sort of took they took a little bit of joy out of the thing, the people doing the toast. And then the people sitting at our table was this American woman, but she told us that she was Buddhist and had been since she was a teenager. And she was married to a Japanese guy who was Buddhist, who became a Buddhist because of this woman. But he was raised in Japan, so how do you get that? Well, then, I was interested in talking to him, but then they took our interest in that, so then they started being outright evangelical to us. I've never seen an evangelical Buddhist, but I sat with two of them, and they were handing us cards and telling us to check out this website and here. But what they were saying was sort of nice. They talked about an eternal truth and a universal truth. And I think if you really read the Bible, you see that it'll work for anybody. Anybody could achieve perfection. Anybody. If they just thought the right words. If they just thought the right words. Whether they're Christian or not. Jesus wasn't a Christian. Right? He wasn't a Christian and he achieved perfection. Adam and Eve weren't Christians, and they were perfect at one point until they were manipulated. Just a little thought here and a little thought there and a drip here and a drip there. Where they started wondering if God really could supply. Or maybe they wanted to be sort of like God. But we're going to get to something that's going to blow your mind in a second. Remember, have the faith of God, or have the faith in God. Whereas many of the texts read, and there's quite a number of them, it says, have the faith of God. Now, religious Christians will call you a blasphemer. Blasphemer! If you say have the faith of God, or have faith like God has faith. But if faith doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of Christians, it's just a word. But you could use, if you look up the word faith, or pistis in the Greek, it means conviction or believing. Or today it might be energy. It's got to be good to have the believing conviction and energy of God. Now, why would Jesus say that to these people? He's talking to his disciples. Have the believing of God. So is that possible? Now, why would he tell them something that's not possible? Jump over that house, Peter. Peter keeps running into it, trying. Probably would have, you see. But to understand the next two verses, you have to understand that one. And we read the next ones all the time. See, if we get our minds, our hearts, our believing to a godly level, we can move mountains, which is what we're going to get to. But it all starts with words, and words that heal our minds and bodies. Like Psalm 107:20 says, he sent his word and healed them and delivered them from their destructions. How would you like to be healed emotionally? How would you like to be healed physically? And I think as I age, things aren't the same, in my body as they were when I was young. It changes. You see? He sent his word and healed them and delivered them from their destructions. Or how about like a cheerful heart is good like a medicine? What would a cheerful heart? How would you make a cheerful heart? Could it be the words that you put into your mind? That's all it is, folks. It's just those little things. The next two verses are going to lay it all out. This is what we can do. This is the level we should be striving for. This is that Christian experiment that we used to talk about. This is how we should be living these next two verses. Verse 23. For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. 24. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever you desire, when you pray, believe that you receive them, and ye shall have them. That's how simple it's supposed to be, folks. But we have to have the believing of God, the conviction of God. You think God doubts himself? Let me see, I'm going to make a universe today. Gosh, I wonder if I can. But what about us? You know, I wonder if I'm going to be able to prosper my business like my partner does. I wonder if I can build my business like that other guy does. He has 6 trucks. I just have 1. What's the difference? You know? Well, just asking yourself questions like that is throwing negatives down your throat. You can do it. You can. You're in that business for a reason. You have some ability or you wouldn't be in it. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. I can do it. Doesn't the Bible call us a super conqueror? Hooper Nikeos? I'm a super conqueror. Well, is that negative? Is there any ifs, ands, or buts? You might be a super conqueror if you just take this class. No, you already are, but we just don't believe we are. We believe what the world tells us. No problem. No worries. You know, it's good to be seen. You know, the result of hanging tightly onto the faith or believing will get us more, will make us have that believing of God. That's a result of it. You know, we can do these things, folks. You can literally move a mountain. No, you can't. Yes, you can. No, I can't. Yes, I can. No, I can't. I mean, we go through this all day long in our minds. Every one of you has something in your mind that you really want. You've been praying for. You've been thinking about. It's a job. It's a relationship. It's health. It's something. I think it's time to go get it. You got to talk yourself into it. You got to set yourself up for success. But some of these little things that we say and think all day long have been stopping us from reaching the great abundance that God promised. Exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think. Ephesians 3:20. Exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think. It's not maybe. You know, where in your life do you need God-like believing? Where do you need it? I'm sure there's some place. It starts with our word choices. Do you think God ever puts himself down? The answer is no. So why would we? You want God-like believing, you have to think of yourself in that same light. We have to put the same words. God, in him is light. There's no darkness at all in God, right? God is light, and in him is no darkness. So why would we put darkness in ourselves, in our heads? You know, some of you may remember the story of Santino, the rock-throwing chimp from 2009. And every day before the zoo opened, this chimpanzee would calmly collect stones from a little moat or from the dirt around that moat and pile them in strategic little piles. And around noon, when the people started coming and the kids started getting hot and started taunting him with their words and facial expressions and waving their hands, he would go to these little piles that he'd set around and he'd throw rocks at the kids. Now, he never hit anybody. He wasn't a very good rock thrower. And but he still thought enough ahead to have a stockpile of ammunition. What stockpile of ammunition do you have for yourself when you get taunted by the world? Now, sadly, to stop Santino from hurling stones, the zoo neutered him. He never threw another stone. So, You know? Yeah. Yeah. Glad I'm not that monkey. Yeah. You know, I guess it's not a monkey, it's an ape, but I was thinking about words. Are they any less artillery than stones? You've been hurt more by people's words than you ever have by somebody throwing a rock or hurting you physically. You know, words are powerful. You know, words can heal or destroy depending upon the accuracy with which they're delivered. You know, I watched, I already told you the story about the young mom, you know, getting her kid to use his words. You know, but I mean, we've seen it. We've had to control ourselves. Okay, you know somebody said something to you and you got to stop yourself because you know you're going to get into some big blowout, and sometimes it's just better to walk away. Sometimes it's better to let them have it. I mean, that's for you. That's your call, you see. But if it's affecting you, if it's a trick and a trap, you know, then you got to realize where it's coming from. You see, so we have to be aware of what we're thinking and saying. If a person can just say a couple of words and tick you off, you know you're being set up. Don't step into that trap. Most teenage daughters know exactly how to do it. Not anyone's in here. They were never like that. You never had children like that, but some people do. You see, you know, you ever heard people say actions speak louder than words? But all actions started with what? Words. Actions are a result of words. They always are. Words are by far the most powerful thing on earth. I mean, gosh, how many dictators and stuff say that it's the printed word, you know, that is more powerful than any weapon? The word. Words are the most powerful things on earth. I mean, look how they manipulated the German people to do horrendous things, and the Japanese people to do horrendous things right before World War II. Caused millions of deaths. And those aren't even the most deaths. In China, you know, Mao, I think it was like 75 million people he had killed who didn't agree with his ideology. It's a crazy amount. Dwarfs Hitler, but you don't hear much about it. You see, I mean, it's craziness. See, words open hearts. Words affect us deeply and emotionally and spiritually. Words allow us to express ourselves. Words are the vehicles for our change. Words allow anyone to free themselves of internal chains. What if a scientist didn't have words? How would he communicate it? Text is still words. Somebody in here said text. You know, words, especially written words, separate humanity from all other creatures. Words unleash the power of the universe. Didn't God get it started with the word? Yes. It was words. What is John 1:1? It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word is with God, and the Word was God. It's words. It's words that got this whole thing started. And it's words that keeps us going. Unleash the power of the universe, folks. You can. Jesus said you could there in Mark 11:23-24. Isn't it? To move a mountain, that's sort of power, isn't it? Yeah. You know, Matthew 18:19 from the Message says, take this most seriously. A yes on earth is a yes in heaven, and a no on earth is a no in heaven. What you say to one another is eternal. I mean this. When two of you get together on earth at all, on anything at all on earth, and make a prayer of it, my Father in heaven goes into action. And when 2 or 3 of you are together because of me, you can be sure that I'll be there. I love that version there. Those are big, powerful words. You know, anything. Take it serious. You know, anything you want on earth, you make a prayer of it, it's going to happen. It's a promise, folks. What do you really want? And if we're not really able to believe that, it's because we've allowed our believing to get corrupted. And how do we allow that to happen? Words. So little phrases that we've allowed ourselves to say for years and years and years. It's the stuff coming at you all day long for years and years and years that do it. You know, scientists have proven that it typically takes 3 positives to overcome 1 negative. You got to work 3 times harder than the world. 3 times harder. Is it harder to swim in the ocean than it is in a pool? Oh yeah. You know, because of the waves, because of the currents. You see, Hebrews 11:3 says, though through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God. The worlds were framed by the word of God. And Jesus said that we can have the believing of God. What can you really do, folks? What problem do we have that is insurmountable? I don't think there is one, except for allowing the wrong words. That's a problem. It's insurmountable if we don't handle the words that go into our minds. You see? And the last part of that verse, I'll read the whole thing again. Hebrews 11:3. Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. You want something to appear that you've never been able to see before? You know, it's through believing. It's through conviction, that conviction of God that you apparently can have. But it takes work, folks. The hardest work you'll ever have to do is to control every thought. Bring every thought captive to the obedience of Christ, right? Doesn't the Bible say that? You know, it talks about renewing your mind, renewing it. Well, how hard is that to get a new mind into your mind? It takes work. That's cleaning a lot of dishes mentally. And they just keep getting dirty, folks. Only people who keep clean dishes are ones who use paper plates. You know, the words are what spun up this entire universe in the first place. And words still keep our personal universes spinning. Let's use our words wisely, because a change of words can change your life. See, you can speak things into being, folks. You ever heard that term? Speak it into being. Speak something into existence. Did you know you do it every day? Your life is a result of what you've spoken to existence. Imagine if we had more positives in our heads. What would we be speaking into existence? More positive stuff. So really, to boil this teaching down, folks, you know, I mean, we just need, little by little, we get our spoken life, you know, going in the proper direction. And then things are going to begin to happen. On Friday, my skiing partner and I were leaving the mountain. And I had told him, we were on this gondola overlooking this huge field. And I told him that there are some moose at Breckenridge, but I'd never seen them. I'd never seen them. In all the years I've been there, I've never, ever, ever seen a moose. But I talk to a lot of people, and they ask me if I've ever seen them, and I say no. Yeah, and so we left the mountain. I got into my Honda Pilot, started driving. We hadn't even left the city of Breckenridge yet. And my partner was telling me that when he was up in Winter Park, he saw a moose, but it had been a young moose and had black fur, had no antlers. I thought, I'd like to see that. I said that, verbalized out loud, I would really like to see a moose. I had to slam my brakes on. And my anti-lock brakes shuddered my car to a stop just as this moose ran, slipping and sliding across the road, Highway 9. You know, be careful what you ask for. You might just get it. It was a baby moose too, with black fur. I mean, it was sort of weird. You know, I'd seen big ones before, but not there. But I mean, be careful what you ask for. Like that guy who was told by his sisters and his mother that every man dies before they're 55. Gosh, if you can determine the year of your death, I'll be willing to bet you can determine the year of your deliverance. If you can determine the year of your death, you can determine the year that you're going to prosper. Why not make it this year? This year I'm going to prosper, folks. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to find that person. I'm going to drop the weight this year. I'm going to do it. You know, I mean, whatever your thing is. I always use those examples because they're common ones. You see? And so really, let's control what we say. Let's control what we think. You know, had Jesus not spoken the right words at the right time, remember when he was dealing with that woman who was caught in the very act of adultery? She was pulled out from under somebody and then stood in front of this whole group of people. And they said, this woman, by the law, she should be stoned to death. And they all picked up these stones and they grabbed Jesus to try to trick him. And they go, what do you say? The law of Moses says she's supposed to be stoned. What do you say, Jesus? And he said, whichever one of you has never sinned, let him be the one to cast the first stone. Then he kneeled down, started texting. In that day, he wrote on the ground, he tweeted, or whatever he did at that time. Did something on Facebook, you see. And then one by one, from the oldest to the youngest, they dropped their rocks. And they took off. And the woman was left there alone with him. And he said, did anybody condemn you? She said, nobody condemned me. He said, then neither do I. He says, go and try better next time not to sin. She walked off. He saved her life with just a handful of words. You know, if he had kept his mouth shut, what would have happened to that woman? She'd be dead. What can our words do for somebody? What can our words do for ourselves? You know, God magnified his word above his name. God thinks highly of his words, and so should we. We should think highly of our words. You ever wondered why certain things in your life didn't happen the way you imagined? Or on the other hand, have you ever marveled at how miraculously you received something exactly like you just said? You see, in both cases, the answer is as simple as it is powerful, and it's about word choices. It's always about word choices. Control the words that you say to yourself. Control the words that you say to other people, and you are going to do amazing things. So, word choices. God bless.